Hey, this is Todd. Wanted to spend a few minutes talking about Legend of the Grancrest War, in particular the concept of crests and how I thought it was an interesting idea that could be used in a D&D or other fantasy campaign. So first of all, history. I was a big fan back in the day of, I guess, a classic anime called Record of the Lodos War, which I found out recently when I went to just do some research and look things up about the show, that it was actually based on a D&D campaign, which was, I guess, turned into some kind of chronicle or written account that was, I think it was posted in some magazines, and anyway, it turned up into a manga and then turned into an anime. And I really enjoyed that show, not knowing it was based on a D&D campaign, but looking back on it, it makes a ton of sense because it definitely builds on D&D tropes. There's, even though they don't necessarily work the same as in classic D&D, it definitely concerns a party with a human and an elf and a dwarf, and it has dragons, and it has kind of a lot of the classic D&D setup involved. So fast forward, it was actually kind of a coincidence. I'd been rewatching Lodos War on a Blu-ray, and I happened to end up in Netflix, and then I was searching through kind of the Netflix originals, I think it was on, and up comes Record of the Grancrest War. And of course I thought, well, that sounds awfully familiar, and sure enough, in the description, it said it was from the same people or same author or authors as Record of the Lodos War. So thus inspired, I started to watch it, and the other night I finished it up. Now, as far as the show itself, not necessarily a big fan of it. I think it was a lot of a mixed bag. The world is sort of interesting, but it has a lot of maybe sort of anime stuff that I'm not really into. There, not a ton of sexualization, but there's a lot of very buxom, hourglass clad females, and some of them not exactly wearing super appropriate clothing, and them finding reasons to bare, although they tastefully cover up nipples and whatnot. But there's a lot of bearing of things that happen in different segments. There's sort of I don't want to call it not necessarily a rape scene, but there's definitely a barely consensual sex scene that's I thought was maybe not particularly necessary to anything, but it was thrown in there. And then I think, like some anime, the plot's kind of all over the place. It's over. I think it's 24 episodes, and it just felt like there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of things. And maybe if I'd read some of the other materials, I think in preparation for doing this video, I had looked up some different things about it. And there are some, I guess they call them light novels. I'm not sure what makes them light, but so there's some novelization, and there's manga, which maybe goes into more detail. But the thing that what made me want to make the video about this today was to talk about this concept of crests, because I thought the crests were really interesting, and I thought that it was something that if I could watch that anime and then pull something out, like I say, wow, this is something that I could utilize in my game. The crests were it. So just to give an overview, I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on the show itself, and I don't know that much. A lot of times I had it on the background, so I wasn't necessarily getting the full lore dump if they did give a big lore dump about the world. But basically, the world is, if you want to think of it like it's a pressure cooker of chaos. So at some point there was chaos stuff all over the place, then it sort of got bottled up in a sense, and I guess it maybe can leak out into the world still, or maybe people can summon it. There's still chaos elements. The way that they were able to bottle up this chaos is through these things they call crests, which I guess is a kind of a magic that attaches to you, or that you can attach to yourself. I think it even is made of chaos itself. Somehow you can convert the chaos into this crest. Once you have a crest attached to you, you can summon it at different points, or I guess whenever at need calls, and it can do different things. And over the show, they have different characters will, you know, reveal their crests and make something happen with them. So that's kind of a neat concept in and of itself. The fact that you can kind of, and it has like a glowing symbol to it, which will sometimes it's in the sky, sometimes it appears on the person, sometimes it appears on them. They have these characters called artists who have it sort of imprinted on their body, and it gives them supernatural power. And then you have these other people that have lords, that they have the crest that they can sort of summon. And not only that, they can summon them, but you can transfer them. Minor spoilers. I think it happens in the first episode, but the main character is not a lord. They're not a noble, but through something happens, and they end up getting in a situation where they're able to confront this noble and basically demand through lawful means, force them to relinquish their quest, which ends up essentially giving this character lordship. Because the other neat thing about crests is that they're not only just symbols of nobility or something that nobles have, because common people don't have crests, only these lords do, but because you can transfer them. As a commoner, he was a commoner, he gets this crest. Having the crest gives him the title, and it gives him rulership of this area. So he went into this small, a barony, and the baron gives him the crest. That crest makes him the new baron. it doesn't mean there's no sort of mind control element. It doesn't mean that because you have a crest, the Baron, the people who live there, eyes roll white and they all just obey your commands. It's not like that. But, he who controls the crest controls the barony.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
Which I thought was another kind of neat idea. I think particularly when you get into Stronghold, the neat thing is that, as happens throughout the series, is people are trying to pool all these crests together. Now, I looked it up, and I think maybe it found some things, and I think in the show either I wasn't paying enough attention or the show is not particularly clear about what happens when you're merging multiple crests together. Do you reveal them all at once? Do you use just each one on its own? I didn't get really good answers to that, and I think if I was going to go more into the mechanics of it, I'd want to figure out, well, what happens when you can have more than one crest, because it's clear in the show that you can. And one of the things that these different people are trying to do is to unite all the crests to create the Grancrest. This idea of getting multiple crests together, and you can also divvy them up. So something will happen is a couple times where they basically pass crests back and forth. Oh, I give you my crest, or I give it back. You pledge your loyalty to me, so I'll give you this crest. So there's a lot of sort of maneuvering with the crests. The other thing with the crests is, even though they don't say it, it really goes back to that law versus chaos. The crests are totally what I would see in D&D terms as a lawful element. It's magic of law, right? You have chaos, and this thing is here to try to bind everybody together. It's trying to bind people together as far as the rulership of these lands. It's clearly tied into how these domains work. It seems that it's clearly about maintaining order against this fermenting chaos that's kind of seething beneath the surface. And I think when I did read up a little bit on the history of the crests, even though they are foreign from chaos, their primary purpose was to hold chaos at bay. So it really works as kind of, you have this kind of chaos, which could be, I think on the show it's mostly demons. There's a vampire lord in the mix, and I don't know, there's maybe there's probably other, I think lots of abominations and all kinds of things like of that nature that are part of this chaos. And then you have these, somehow they were able to take the chaos energy and bind it and turn it into sort of lawful energy. And then you have this conflict, which is, I think, is great stuff for using it again. That sort of fits in at least the older school, because remember, back at the beginning of D&D, there was really just Law and Chaos, which was just basically two cosmic teams that were fighting up against each other. And this is a perfectly mechanism where you have sort of chaos and you have these crests that are implementations of law. So I thought it was really a really neat idea. I really like the fact that there are things that not only separate the nobles from the commoners, though, to be honest, you could get rid of the whole noble thing. I mean, it would be really cool if families had crests, like every family had a crest. And then, what happens when you have multiple kids, who gets the crest? Because there might be only one crest, or maybe there's a master crest for the family and all the kids get sort of smaller crests. One thing they show on the show is that certain of these crests, and I hate to keep using the term crest, but I don't know what else that's what they call it. They don't really give multiple names, but some of the crests will affect followers, which is great if you're using minions or, any kind of hirelings, or again, with domains and strongholds where you have followers. There's these weird kind of tropes of where they just kind of grab an ethnicity and they throw it in there. There's basically in Italy, and they definitely pattern the noble family on the mob, and their crest special ability is called Omerta, and when they do Omerta, they summon this crest power. All these followers, I guess, either in the past, or I don't even know if they do it right in the moment, kind of swear their life on something, and then they'll do anything to accomplish the goal. So if this Omerta crest activates, the little symbol of the crest appears on all the people. I don't know if it's in their hearts, might have been on their hearts, might have been on their foreheads. I don't remember exactly where it was. When they're under the influence of this crest, they will stop at nothing. So if you were to activate this crest and say, okay, kill that guy, you could put a whole bunch of kids in front of that guy. And these people, even if in normal life, they were the gentlest of souls, they will just murder all those kids if that's what it takes to get to that guy. There's another people, the Nords, and they're Vikings. Even with the stereotypical, even though it's not historically accurate, horned crest, big beards, they look like oversized. They all have a very similar look like man-sized dwarves. Basically, they're all super burly with big beards. They use axes, except for one of the sub-commanders, who is kind of an anime redheaded girl with like a massive axe. But everyone else is kind of big, burly dwarves. Their special power, when their chief or their king activates his crest, they all go berserk. So of course it's very fitting. They're Vikings, they go berserk, and it's tied into the crest. Other ones have crests that will do more defensive stuff. One guy who's kind of a loner, his crest basically just amps him up. It just makes him more powerful, because his deal is he was always about just kind of solo stuff. So even though he has a baron and stuff like that, he doesn't use his crest or his crest power for whatever reason, They don't really say whether it comes from the person or whether it comes from the crest itself. So I don't know if the Omerta crest comes from the personality of the person who's holding it or from the history and everything of their family. Again, that's more great fodder to play with. How much is something that they choose, and how much is stuff that's chosen for them? I don't think there's a clear answer, but again, it just means that we can make up whatever answer we want. The other thing with the crest is they're known. So they're known quantities. If you go to the Duke, Baron, Earl, whatever, they've got a crest. You also know that you can't take it by force. So there's a lot of scenes in the anime of, your crest or your life. You can take them. I think if somebody dies, you can take it. And if they surrender, you can take it. But it's certainly an option, to give it up. It's not Highlander where they have to kill you to take it.
There can be only one.
I think I read on a wiki somewhere that maybe you could create one yourself if you were powerful enough from kind of chaos, which again, that would be itself be an interesting quest line. If you had to find some sort of pure chaos energy and learn some ritual to try to bind that into your own crest, that would be a really cool thing to have too. And then you could talk about, well, I don't know how that ties to the land. Maybe part of the whole ritual, you have to tie it to some segment of land. Maybe the land comes from, again, obviously there's the cultural stuff of the people with crests are powerful, so you give them land, and then it kind of morphs over time into being sort of the crest is like your ducal seal. Whoever owns the seal is the duke. Whoever has the crest is the duke. Or you could say that it actually ties into the land itself. Again, cool things that they don't really get into in the show, but I thought it was really great inspiration. I thought the crests were the one thing around the show I really pulled away saying, wow, that's kind of neat. And it has a lot of different ways you could utilize it and make it interesting. But I've babbled on about it long enough. If I can get to it, maybe I'll write up at least a first shot at what it might look like to have crests on the show. They have a lot of different crests, but it's one of the things when you're watching it visually as opposed to reading it in a manga or in a light novel or a heavy novel is that, you'll see the whole thing kind of explode and whatever effects it makes, but you don't get really that description of what is it actually doing. But they have ones that do shields, and they have one that are more attack oriented, and there's ones that, I could see there being ones that may be more social oriented on sort of there's one lady, I don't remember what her rank is, but she clearly has lots of predicated on her sex appeal, which again, something I'm not really into in this aspect, but it is what it is. And I don't know if her crest played into that at all. I don't remember. Maybe I just missed it or wasn't paying attention when she activated her crest, what is, but I could see that maybe that could be something, a kind of a siren type figure whose crest is all about that. Again, there was the crest that was all about sort of military one-on-one prowess, and there were definitely crests that would do stuff, either sort of dominate your followers, like the Omerta seemed to be one where they were not in their own minds, they were dominated, or the Berserk one, which is more just taking in the natural ferocity of these people and just amping it up, to 11, to the point where they were really difficult to stop when they were under influence. But anyhow, there's a lot of meat there. I think it's a neat idea, and I thought I would share it. I don't know. I think it just popped up on Netflix, record of the Grancrest War. So if you're into anime and you remember Lodos Wars and you want to see sort of some new in a similar vein, or at least from the same people, you might find it worth your time. I don't regret watching it because again the crest itself is neat, but I don't know that I would watch it again anytime soon. I don't want to get too far in a review, but anyway, that's all I've got on crests and record of the Grancrest War. I should have more videos shortly this week. I'm seem to be always behind, but I'm trying to catch up. But that's all I've got for now, and I will talk to you later.